So, hello everyone. You're here at Self Care on the Go for Educators, and I am your host and expert self care person, Rosalind Henderson. And I am very excited today because I get to speak to the most wonderful VP that I've met, Ocie Lowery III. Let me introduce him to you. He has over 18 years experience in education, and he spent 15 years inspiring students as a passionate math teacher before stepping into the role of associate principal, a role that he's held for 3 years. In recognition of his outstanding commitment to teaching, Ocie was honored with the Teacher of the Year award in 2022. And beyond his achievements, Ocie is a proud husband of 17 years and a devoted dad to three amazing children who are the heart of his world. Everyone put your hands together and let's welcome Ocie Lowery. Thank you for being here. Yes,
Oh,
yes,
that's me.
there,
That's me.
there, that is you, sir. Oh my goodness, what a treat. We had a real great discussion. Oh, I guess it's been about a week and a half ago, and I was just excited for you to come on. I love the angle that we're taking today on this podcast because we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a leader and at the same time being an introvert. And as we delve into the conversation, OC, I want to start off by asking you, can you kind of clear up some common myths about introverts for us?
Sure, I can do that. So first of all, pleasure to be here on today in the midst of everything that's going on. And I am going to definitely enjoy having this conversation with you today. So with the misconception of introverts, when we talk about introverts, one of the things that people quickly go to is someone who is very to themselves, also reserved, and someone who can be a party pooper at time. And that's really not the case. What it boils down to for an introvert is the ways and the environments they need to be recharged to be able to present themselves to people. Introverts normally want to be there in front of people and be the spokesperson, but it takes a lot of energy out of them because of a lot of the preparation that they want to do beforehand. And so outwardly, sometimes they can be perceived as someone who maybe fumbles over their words or is very anxious, or also someone who is short with words and don't want to talk a whole lot,
Mhm.
even though people around them will say they have all these brilliant ideas. And it really boils down to how that person's brain is wired, and also want to make space for others to shine as well. So it's something that people have to work through. So those are some misconceptions when it comes to introverts that um, or things that are misconceived about introverts overall.
Wow. And thank you because a lot of those things I have heard, you know, as I've traveled this road of life and, clearing that up is important. So, you know, as an introverted leader, I guess the question that pops into my mind is, um, what kind of boundaries do you have to set up so that you're, remain fresh, that, you're constantly interacting with people, you're making these decisions each and every day. How do you put up boundaries to protect that energy?
I had to really learn to trust my calendar to really kind of put what I'll call gaps in my schedule. So, as you said, in all of the titles, positions that I've held, and what have you, being a introverted leader or a leader who is introverted by nature, I've learned I've had to put in 10-minute gaps or 15-minute gaps to be able to recharge before I go back out into a building and really encounter whatever comes at me. And that gap isn't always spent really doing anything. Sometimes the gap is spent just coming to my office, taking a deep breath, refocus on what the task is at hand. In my office, I have different quotes and different markers that helps to refocus me when it's a busy day or when I have a gap moment. It could be either the theme or the quote that we have for the year. It could be something personal to me, whether it's a scripture or something that a note one of my children left with me to remind me of where things are going on, especially in those moments where the day isn't going how we want it to go. And
Yes.
there's a lot of things being thrown that can really weigh a person's down. And leading from an introverted lens, you tend to take some things more personal, what you probably should or need to. And so it helps to have those markers of that moment you may have come out of does not define who you are. It's just a moment that's there that you'll be able to grow from. And some days are easier than others, but those are that's one of the major things I've really done to set a boundary is really re-examining my schedule. And then also learning to keep work at work and let home be home,
Wow.
and having different markers where if I need to talk about work at home, having a system in place and a time limit. So I don't dwell on it. I say what I need to say. I'm trying to be very succinct, and asking permission as well. So it's more of like building some systems, but in the heat of the battle, in the heat of the building, really having those 10, 15 minutes or even 5 minutes to
Yes.
just be able, I just need to refocus and really also building up my teammates, the other social principals to let them know who I am, not being afraid to share of this is something that I need to show up as my best person, not just for the students or the teachers, but also for them to be their counterparts.
Wow. What I'm hearing is what I think is a little bit atypical.
Mhm.
You're in touch with yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you know who you are. You know what's going to recharge you.
Mhm.
You have systems in place to make sure that you're sharp each and every day and that you're
Mhm.
not burning out. Do you find that you're atypical when you talk to teachers, when you talk to others in leadership?
I
Um,
think I've been told that I'm very aware of things. I look at things from like a system lens, but
mhm.
I think that comes from two places. One, for me being an only child growing up, so I think I've always looked at relationships from like an outside viewpoint at times, and try to find where do I enter in that space. I think the other thing is that it's trial by fire. Like if the people is it's interesting you bring that up because I'm starting now to get to the point where colleagues that I came into education with or who were here already, I'm starting to see them retire. And I think about my first impression with them. So even though right now I come off like very maybe reserved, demure, if you will, very controlled. That wasn't who I was 22 year first year teacher in a classroom, 7 classes, 32 freshmen, going through the gauntlet, teaching the same thing 7 times in a row. I had to go through the fire of learning how to control my emotions. I had to go through the fire of learning how to not take out my frustration on students. I had to understand how do I what does it mean to have authority but still compassion. I had to go through the fire to learn those things and to be able to say through even failures, which really turned into lessons of this is how I show up, and these are the things that are the telltale signs when I'm going down the wrong path or to be able to catch myself. So I think part of it is doing the work, me personally, of who I am so I know how I'm presenting, but it's also the space of I made mistakes and had to pull me to the side and say, this isn't how we roll. This isn't what we want to do. And to walk me through and walk with me on how do I show up and not try to be a cheap copy of someone else because I can only be me.
Wow. Wow. That's so profound to think there's so much in what you just said. We could unpack it all day. Let me ask, as an AP,
Mhm,
and I know you have a principal too, but
mhm.
how are you bringing some of this self-care revelation that you're sharing with me into the culture, making it part of the culture where maybe teachers and staff and maybe even students can benefit from some of your self-care knowledge?
I think the way I do it is I do it through modeling and through questions.
Mhm.
So what I mean by that is I believe if you ask anyone who's encountered me in the past maybe 3 to 5 years, they will be quick to tell you that one of the questions they will hear, they've heard me ask them is, how are you doing as a person? And that is something that I picked up going to one of the conferences. I forget which one, but it was one thing. It was something where the speaker was talking about, yes, we are educators. Yes, we are associate principals and leaders and what have you. But we first have to show up as people. And if you don't see the person, you won't see their position or their potential. And so I just took it upon myself to just ask a simple question of, how are you doing as a person? Because it's so quick when we talk about burnout and other things that's affecting people being in education or not in education, or even parents deciding where they're going to send their students to. It's the fact that we don't see each other as people as much as we should, to
Yes.
recognize that when they leave this building, they are still a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, or a parent, whatever the case may be. And so I model it by asking, how are you doing as a person? And I find so many people have to pause and stop
Wow.
and be like, how am I doing as a person? And that's part of when I talk about myself having a gap time, I create that time for them of, how are you doing as a person? What is your world outside of whatever is concerning you right now? And I do that to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So to my colleagues, I do it that way. To my teachers that I supervise, I do it that way. The other way I do it within scheduled meetings, I will find the moment, especially when it's tense, to try to pause us and remind ourselves that we have to think about, we have to model what we want even in our classrooms. So if we want self-care routines and protocols, procedures, the SEL work that we're doing to show up in classroom, we have to make sure that's built as a culture within our meetings, or else it'll just be a checklist thing. It has
Yes.
to become who we are. Only I found it to be successful is if we are intentionally scheduling it routinely, to where when we don't do it, we notice it and we go back and we fix it.
Wow. I mean, that's tremendously powerful. They're blessed to have you as an AP to bring those kind of, you have to keep those ideas in front of people and,
Mhm.
and just kind of motivate and keep motivating them to take
Right.
action on those things in order for it to become part of the culture.
Exactly. But I think also, to your point, to tie it back to being an introvert, doing that takes a lot of energy. It goes back to when I mentioned the definition of an introvert.
Yes.
It's being very intentional, but it takes a lot of energy to do it because and there's different level of introverts. But for me as a leader, it's the part of, I also know I deal with people pleasing.
Hmm.
And so sometimes it's a good thing because you want to make sure everyone's on the same page. If you take any personality test with me, I am the blue, I am the harmony, I am the relationship, I'm the supporter, the disc, I don't know which letter it is, but I'm the, let's make sure we all get along. And sometimes that is good, and other times that is the death knell. And so finding that balance of doing that is where I am currently at. Of, I know that about myself, but now how do I ensure that even though I want everyone to be in harmony, sometimes you must have conflict to get the change that you're looking for.
Hmm.
And it's different when everyone wants to go with the change versus when they don't want to go with the change. So that is where I'm personally at right now, of trying to find that balance where I am still myself. I am still the introverted person I am, but when we got to make changes and it's not the change everyone wants to do, but we still need to do it, that I'm still able to to do the work necessary and still be comfortable with decision that does not take away more mental real estate than what it is required.
Wow. If I can give you a little feedback, OC, this is what I experience of you because I can understand why you go home because you appear to be a deep thinker
Mhm.
and that you're detail oriented and then you're putting systems in place. And I get to see you just stepping back and saying, is this working? Okay, let me tweak this. I mean, you are a thinker, whereas a lot of people in life, a little bit unconscious. They go through life a little bit more unconscious. So you're very
Mhm.
present. You're present in life. So that does take energy.
Mhm.
That's why a lot of people don't expend that kind of energy.
Mhm.
So I just want to give you that feedback. I think it's just wonderful because you're just you're providing such a richness
Mhm.
to other folks because of who you are. Um, so my next question is, you have colleagues around you. What part do colleagues play in helping you stay grounded and calm?
um, my colleagues, my wonderful team. For to me, it's interesting because we're starting to do some more reflective work about like how we are as a team. And I've been blessed that I haven't had too much turnover within my team. So me completing my 3 years, there's three of us who's been together all 3 years since I've been here. It's only been really one spot that's constantly have been turning over, or one or two. But nevertheless, as a team, I believe for me, they have learned to support me in giving me feedback. One of the things being in this position as a leader, I've learned that it can get very quiet. It's funny because with the Tony Awards recently appearing and seeing the 10-year reunion of Hamilton, I think about the song "It's Quiet Uptown." And as a leader, as an AP, it can get very quiet very quickly
Yes.
because you don't hear a lot of feedback from people. You don't know where things are going. And so you're really having to use your eyes to see and seek out where things are progressing. And the reason why that's important is because you want to make sure you still have a pulse on what's going on in the building and with the teams that you manage. And whether they like you or not, you have to see the fruit at the end of the day. So for the team, they help me to put things in perspective, especially when the fruit is not coming as quickly as I think it should.
Mm,
They're very good to remind me that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And they're very good at they're very good at reminding me where I did have an impact at the right time. The
wow.
other thing is they're good at sending me random notes, like of like you're doing a good job. Like just in the phrase of we're doing the right work, you're doing a good job. I appreciate what you led. Even though we do it as a team, there's a lot of projects where one of us has to be at the point of the sword. And so we're very good at, and for me, it's very comforting when they can say, I liked how you led us. Like you made sure we did not fall.
Wow.
Or you took what we said seriously. Like those things of their seeing me is very important. And to an introvert, it's very important for them to be seen. But if they're not seen and they're just a flower on the wall, then that's how they quickly get into their heads. So
Wow. So it sounds like there's the power of communication
absolutely.
play here, and it
Absolutely.
sounds pretty developed amongst your team and yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that can really reduce a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing about leadership, as we know, it can be very, very lonely
Mm-hmm.
at the top, and getting that feedback and supporting each other, I think is
Mm-hmm.
critical
But I
to.
think I also want to bring up the part when it talks about being lonely is when you are the new gun, you are the young buck, you are new to the spot, and you look around and you see veterans in your colleague as your colleagues now, and trying to make sure that you have your space, making sure your voice is honored, and like I said, we're at the end of year 3, so it's like I have built that capacity, but year 1 I was not there. Year 1 it was there's so many things being thrown at me in this position. You gotta be able to manage things without someone holding your hand, and you gotta figure out the lay of the land. Like just where is stuff? Where's the bathroom? Where's that at? How many bathrooms we have? Where is it at? Where's the staff bathroom? Like stuff that when teachers and when parents come, because of the title, they expect you to know. Now you have to deal with this imposter syndrome of where is stuff. And then the question is, can I ask for help? And then it's like, I've asked the question multiple times. Someone going to reject me because I really don't remember this because we're dealing with schedules. We're dealing with kids' behavior. We're dealing with all the district training. We're going this, that, and the third. I haven't sit down and I don't have my gap moment and all of that. Because as soon as I think I have it, now I got to be able to lead. But how am I leading when I don't have something? So it took months to be able to communicate for myself what my needs were for
Yeah.
the team to be able to respond. And when I said communicate my needs, it was through me crying in a meeting of
Wow.
saying, I can't hold this up anymore.
Wow.
Like, I can't hold this mask on anymore. I can sit here now and tell you I had a mask on for almost a year and a half because I did not trust yet until I broke and I said, I can't do this anymore. And that's when a lot of things change. Because if I did not break, it was not going to change.
Wow.
And so yeah,
Wow.
so I am in tune now, but it doesn't excuse that I had to go through that I had a mask on, that I was an imposter with the in the state that I'm in the position I'm in, being the only African American administrator, being the first African American administrator in my position in my building. There's a lot of weight that comes on, and it's a lot of pride I have with it, but it's also a lot of pressure.
For
And
sure.
so I had to build those systems to be able to say things like, I am a Black man and you're asking me to do something. Can we think about the perception?
Wow.
That was not something I would have said 3 years ago. Now I can say it. And the reason why it ties into this burnout and stress is I now have a way to communicate something that will weigh on me for months and will try to break me. Now I can say it in 15 minutes and say, this is a concern that I have because it's not just serving me. It's how does it affect our students and our community and what are we trying to portray? So
My
it
goodness.
was a learned thing.
And it took bravery
Mhm.
to take off that mask and to talk honestly and in a vulnerable sort of way.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that that is something that you modeled, and that's what probably broke, the dam, so to speak, so that
Mhm.
real communication can happen. I don't know how often that happens,
Mhm.
where we're taking off our mask and getting real like that.
Mhm.
But I do believe I'm hearing that that really did, because now they're helping you shoulder the weight and the
Mhm.
responsibility of this leadership position just
Mhm.
because you said, help, help.
Mhm.
So boy, kudos to you on that. So
Mhm.
you're a great model in that way. And what I did, let me back up a little bit, because
Yes, ma'am.
I've always been an elementary school teacher in the elementary space. So
Yes, ma'am.
help us understand a little bit, what are some typical stressful scenarios that you deal with on a high school level?
Okay. I will try to span teachers and leader and APs and leaders
Uh-huh.
because I guess that's in my wheelhouse, if you will. So as a teacher, I think the stress is similar to any level that you're at when it comes to management of student behaviors, when it comes to classroom management, instructions, teamwork, and what have you. Where it looks a little different in my world is for us when we get to high school. That is when graduation credits kick in.
Mm.
And so now we have the responsibility of ensuring that students not just pass, but also that they receive the credits to be able to graduate in 4 years. And so, given that most people come, not most people, let me take that back. I have ran into scenarios where people, students, and families have the feeling that that they're not good at math. They made the declaration of, I've never been good at math. Side note, you being good at math is not defined by the definition, not assigned by the assessment. People are mathers. You can do math. I know you can do math because you can balance a checkbook. You can do math, period. And with math, it comes with thinking. And so part of the stress comes in is addressing even that phrase being stated. Part of it is also the perception of your course. Part of it is the perception of your capability to be able to teach someone's child for various reasons. And this is from a teacher post. Then you get into the requirements that curriculum coordinators will provide to you, the administration place upon you, the focus of the year, then hitting benchmarks and goals, being able to look at your grades. And those things start to become stressors. Then you get into the routine of the day and the year and all things occur. So those are stress that will come from a teacher lens that this is the reason why we look at the pattern, the month of October, the month of February, or historically where teachers are stressed the most because October, everyone's mask is off and now we see everyone who they really are. February is the longest month and God bless snow, but it also where seasonal depression and things of that nature start to kick in. So as a teacher, that's the lens. As instructional leader, as an AP, the stress that you have is kind of multiplied by 3 or 4 because now you're responsible for teachers. Whereas a teacher you're responsible for students, but 2 adults. As a leader, you're responsible for students, for adults, 2 adults, by adults. What I mean by that is students are the most important piece in individual in this whole system. As a leader, I'm a supervisor of teachers, which are adults, to make sure they are growing, they are maturing, and accountable. I'm also accountable to my colleagues, but I'm also accountable by my principal and district personnel. So there's another level and lens that you get that now you're in rooms where you never thought was possible. You're setting things in place. You're building systems. So in building systems, you're now responsible of if we're going to reach the goal across the board. And you start going to spaces that you don't, that's not part of your content area. So where in elementary, you kind of get a taste of everything. You kind of have an idea, even though you have a focus, you kind of got a taste of everything. As a instructional leader, I can have all math one year, that I can jump and have all Spanish. I'm a math teacher. Want me to go into Spanish and try to help them and support them? And the answer is yes, because I believe my instructional strategy will be able to impact them. But that's a place where I'm having to deal with some of the burnout, some of the stress moments there, because I'm in an area I've never been in. But we have to quickly turn things around. And then you get into a lot of reports and evaluation things you have to handle, and your own development that you have to do as well as being able to be a support, because you are called an associate principal, which means when your principal's out the building, someone has to make sure the building still runs. And let's not forget safety. Safety matters. So those are just some things when it comes to being a leader that also can cause stress that you have to manage as well.
Whew, there's a lot of moving parts there. And
Yes, ma'am.
particularly in the area of safety, are you finding that to be a very within these times where you do have, students, somehow mental health issues are influencing students to do more, sometimes violent, or just to act more erratic? Is that a big issue on campus too?
I think it's us being prepared and having a plan for if that was to happen. So this is where we want to have, it's one of those, we want to have positive thoughts, but we also have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. And that does fall in my purview. I have to be aware of if something was to go down, what are we going to do? Because if everything falls sideways, it's on us to direct everyone else on what to do. They're going to be listening for our voice and our guidance. And so we do have a system in place and we are aware of it. But then it's beyond just punishment and suspensions and things of that nature. It is like you mentioned, how do we talk about restorative practices? How do we present restorative practices? How do we help students to learn how to regulate themselves? Like how do we not just talk about it, but be about it? And how do we build that capacity and being able to be prepared for that? So it is a constant conversation that we are having to try to make sure that we are building those systems in place. And this is where community partners are necessary. This is where we lean upon agency. This is where we lean upon people's backgrounds. Like what do you bring to the table and what can we activate? Because once again, we know that relationships is a very important tool for our students to be able to get the support that they are needing across the board. So safety is huge, especially outwardly to our families and to our community, because if someone doesn't feel like the building is safe, they are choosing to go to other schools and other school districts and other systems and other protocols. And some of it is because of safety. So we have to make sure that our buildings are safe. And it's not just the students, it's also teachers. It goes back to burnout for them. If they don't feel they have a safe working environment, including harassment and other things, but also just, I'm going to be able to return home safely, they are making life decisions as well. And so we want to retain good teachers. Not only do we have to grow and mature them and mentor them and what have you, we also got to make sure to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a huge concern.
Yes, my goodness, absolutely. So last question,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Busy Man. In what ways has your introversion, how has it become a strength? Um, um, you think for the school, and how's it a strength, maybe even in terms of how you deal with your stress?
I think it is a strength because it shows that extroverted people are not the only building leaders that exist. I think it shows that when we talk about diversity and we talk about um, spectrums and the scope of everything, representation does matter. And that's not just in the outward appearance of people, that's also in their behavior and their skill set. So I think for me, it's a strength because it shows that you can be introverted. You can have the nature of wanting to kind of be inward and still be able to have the energy to present well to people and also show them that it is possible. Introvert doesn't mean I'm quiet. Hopefully, this has proven that. But it doesn't mean I'm quiet. It means I am reserved. It does mean that I am cautious. I am a deep thinker. But it also means that I recognize my words have power. And in it, I think it shows where you can watch and see everything as long as you communicate what's going on for the betterment of people. It is still a plus. So I think to answer your question more directly, I think because of my introvertedness, I tend to look for the gaps of things and try to address how do we fill that gap
Mm.
because we can see the initial thing, but it's going to be the little things. And I truly believe, little holes in boats will still sink the boat. So we need to address the holes. We need to address the cracks. We need to address those things, and we can't just push them off. We have to eventually make them a priority, or else we're going to sink. So I think that has been a big attribute, a positive one to the building and to my colleagues.
Woo, boy. OC, thank you so much for just having this conversation with me. Look, everyone, if this has been of value to you, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast channel. Self-care on the go for educators. And you see the kind of quality people that we have on that can make a real difference in terms of your stress levels and managing your stress levels. Because OC right here, boy, OC, you laid it down.
Thank you.
And I mean, he's giving you some ideas that you can run with in being the very best you can be without burning out. And this is where we're trying to go. So again, OC, thank you so very, very, very much for being here. And audience, until next time, peace and blessings. Bye-bye for now.